Hello BookTube, it's Joshua here, and I'm going to be doing another another installment of my bookshelf tour. Previously I did the poetry shelf, and now this next shelf on the left of me, is it's kind of a mishmash of various works. It's really kind of it's miscellaneous. So there's not too much of an order to this. Although starting off in this very top shelf, there is slightly in order. It is slightly organized, and you'll see how. To start us off, the complete works of William Shakespeare. This is just who is this published by? I don't even know. I don't even know if it says. Rock Point. I think that's who published it. Anyway, though, this is just a huge hardcover copy of William Shakespeare's complete works. No notes, and it looks like this. A little bit heavy, but not too bad. Not as heavy as another complete Shakespeare volume that I will show you in a second. I have a lot of Shakespeare, even though I haven't nearly read all of him. I've only read a handful of his plays. But yeah, I actually have a lot of different Shakespeare volumes. So I'll show you a whole bunch in a row here. These are the Everyman's Library Shakespeare volumes. Firstly I have Tragedies Volume 1, Comedies Volume 1, Comedies Volume 2, Histories Volume 1, Histories Volume 2. And so, yeah, it's 5 books of William Shakespeare. These books do have notes, but they aren't as heavily annotated as the next one that I will show you. And yeah, and they also have introductions. And I love these Everyman's Library things, but I'm going to put these down now because they're very, very heavy. Okay, next up, this is the big boy. This is the Norton Shakespeare, based on the Oxford edition, second edition, with a bunch of scholars' names on there. So this is like the scholarly edition of Shakespeare. It's in this slipcase. I really like this, whatever it is, this drawing of the world. I don't really know what that is, but I like it. And this is the actual book when it's taken out of the slipcase. As you can see, it's a lot bigger. I think it's even bigger than the first one, if we compare. Yeah, it's like slightly wider, because for a number of reasons. First of all, the scholars who created this volume are a little bit more indulgent. I believe they put in 3 different versions of King Lear. They put 3 different manuscript versions of King Lear all together instead of just choosing one. And it's very heavily annotated, full of notes, full of, it has like a 60-70 page introduction. So this would be, if I want to read all those notes, this would be the place to go to. Probably, I haven't read, like I said, I haven't read too much Shakespeare, so I'm going to want to do, hopefully at some point, a read-through of his works. And when I do that, I probably won't use this scholarly volume. I'll probably use the first volume, this one, or another one. See, I have about 1 billion complete works of Shakespeare volumes, but I might use this one as well, because this one is another complete works. It's published by Collins. It's very I found this at a Value Village. It's very light. It could this could really actually almost fit in my pocket. It's the size of a normal paperback, and its words are just kind of shoved in there. It's a lot smaller, but I really don't mind that, and it's so much more portable. I don't really need notes, so when I do read Shakespeare, I'll probably go to this one. But yeah, I just have lots of Shakespeare. Next up is this one, Seneca, Letters from a Stoic. And I got this probably 3 years ago, and I haven't read it since I first got it. And even then, I'm not sure if I read the full thing or if I just dipped into them. But yeah, I don't really know how I feel about Stoicism. Like I've seen Steve criticize it a lot, criticize the Stoic authors, and I haven't really touched it for a while, so I don't really know I don't have any more advanced thoughts to say, but I have this, and probably I'll want to return to it at some point, and just see what I think. But for now, it's on my shelf and just sitting there. Next up is, oh, look at that, more Shakespeare. This is an individual volume of Hamlet, but this is the Oxford Shakespeare. So, the Oxford World Classics has a really wonderful edition of Shakespeare volumes, but Oxford does one play per volume, and they really fill it with notes. They have a wonderful introduction, and oftentimes, very long notes in here. See that they're taking up like half the page or more. So yeah, and my favorite play by Shakespeare that I've read so far is Hamlet. I love the play, and so yeah, I'm glad I have this. Also, I've shown this on this channel before. This is the collected novels of Nathaniel Hawthorne. I've read The Scarlet Letter. I read it last year and was a little bit underwhelmed by it. But I'm planning on trying it again at some point, and I would like to read his other novels as well. So there's Hawthorne, in that beautiful Library of America edition, and this one is one of my most treasured volumes, even though I haven't read it yet. But I'm really looking forward to reading it. This is the Portable Renaissance Reader. I found this at a little free library, in a basement of a building on campus. And that little free library was full of really, really old and dusty books, which all looked, kind of untouched for a very long time. I think one of the shelves just had this German encyclopedia, I think, and it was just sitting there, and it's probably been there for years, and no one's ever touched it. I mean, so yeah, I found this in the middle of nowhere, and I'm so happy that I found it, because I just recently read a Steve blog post on a Steve Reads post on Steve's book blog on Substack, where he read this himself, although it was in the slightly newer edition. I think this is the older edition. And he talked about it, and I really enjoyed reading that. And that only made me want to read it more. So yeah, the Portable Renaissance Reader, the golden age of Italy and Northern Europe, 1400 to 1600, shone forth in all its rich diversity in the writings of its acknowledged masters. So by my understanding, of course, like the Renaissance you wouldn't be able to fit all of the writings from the Renaissance into a book, and so I don't believe they have anything from Dante, or they don't have any of the Divine Comedy in here, at least. But I think the philosophy for this book is to take excerpts from smaller, unknown authors, as well as the giants, and just kind of create one long series of portraits off of those small excerpts. But not necessarily, like, they aren't going to put the entire Divine Comedy, because that would just be impossible to fit it in. And yeah, anyway. Next up, more Shakespeare. What do you know? This is a Everyman's Library Pocket Poets Edition, and this just has like a selection of sonnets, a selection of his shorter poems, a selection of songs or excerpts from his plays as well. And I think I found this at a used bookstore, and it was just nice to have. So yeah, I'm glad I got this as well. Next up, and more poetry, actually. This is Alfred Lord Tennyson. This is his selected poems. I found this probably 3 or 4 years ago now, in a used bookstore, and this was the volume that I used to introduce myself to Alfred Lord Tennyson. I have the other Oxford World Classics edition on my shelf now, which gives me a little bit more media of a selection. But yeah, this Penguin Classics edition is also very good. It's about like 320 pages, and I wanted more after reading it. But yeah, I kind of value this edition because it was what introduced me to Tennyson. Sorry about my throat. I don't know why. It's doing that. This is Michel de Montaigne. his essays, but it's not, it's of course not, it's not the complete essays, it's a selection of them. And I haven't read this at all. I haven't read any of Montaigne, even though I've wanted to for a while, because I've heard a lot about him. I've heard about him on Steve's channel, and in other places. And yeah, I got this a long time ago again, and I just haven't read Montaigne yet. So yeah, he's an author that I'm looking forward to. Next up, William Wordsworth. This is again, this is the very first edition of Wordsworth's The Prelude, that I found. I remember actually where I got this. It was at a not a used book sale, but it was after I went to the used book sale. I stopped by a used book stand that was nearby to the sale, and there was a very kind lady there, and I remember her because she gave me a discount, which was really nice of her. And I found this just on the shelf, and yeah, I think this was my introduction to Wordsworth, actually, just reading this. It's a very small pocket edition. I love the painting on the cover here, and it's a parallel text, so it has the 1805 and 1850 edition. Actually, I think it's the same thing. It's the same thing as this Penguin parallel text. These are both in the Penguin line, but this is just the pocket paperback, and this is the trade paperback. But yeah, this one goes back farther in terms of my own reading history. Next up, the Quran. This is the Everyman's Library edition of the Quran. I've never read it, but here, I'm gonna see who is the translator for this. Within an explanatory translation by Marmaduke Pickthall. Okay, yeah, I recently subscribed to the New York Review of Books, and in one of the recent issues there was an article going really deep into all the different translations, kind of tracing the history of translations of the Quran. And I believe Pickthall was like an late Victorian, early 20th century translator who took a more prosaic approach to it. He didn't try to render it into poetry, but just tried to just state things very stately. And so yeah, but I don't know much more than that. I haven't read it, so I'm looking forward to this. What else? Oh, yes, now we have the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament. This is the Everyman's Library edition again. Really nice. I really like these editions. You have like this thing here, and I love the way that the Bible is printed in this edition, because instead of having it in columns and having it just all bunched together. Oh, the books fell over. That's okay though. But yeah, they have it going across the page here, and yeah, I enjoy reading like this. It feels less cramped than reading the usual Bible, where it's where all the lines are just in columns. And yeah, I in terms of my experience with the Bible, what have I read? I read Genesis, Exodus, and then I skipped. I tried reading Leviticus, and then I skipped it because it was so boring. And then I think I went to Judges next. It was after the first 5 books. Skipped Deuteronomy. No, I went to Joshua, and then I read Judges. Yeah, so I read the book of Me, and then I read Judges, and then I read Ruth, and I think I stopped there, and then I've dipped into the Psalms. Yeah, I mean, the Bible for me is really just a work in progress. I also listened to Steve Donahue's really wonderful but unfinished read aloud of the New Testament. He did all 4 Gospels, I believe, but then we were in the middle of the Acts of the Apostles when he stopped, and I'm not sure that he's resuming. But that's okay. I mean, he did the 4 Gospels, and that in itself was really, really instructive. But I really enjoyed that series. It taught me a lot, actually, about how to read the Bible in a secular way, like reading it as a novel rather than reading it with dogma. So yeah, that's the Bible. Next up we have, I got these books for Christmas a couple of years ago. One of them was not in the case, but this is falling apart too. Okay, Sorry, this is a mess. Okay, anyway, this is a compendium, a modern kind of retelling of various Greek myths and legends, Celtic, Chinese, Egyptian, Greek and Roman, Indian, and Norse. So just very slim books, where the editors, they give you a kind of historical context of each culture, and they recite for you in a very engaging way, in a very fun way, the myths of these cultures. And I've only dipped into them, and so I don't know much more than that. But yeah, I have this, which would be nice to read at some point. Now we have a lot of philosophers. Yes, philosophers. Okay, first we have Epictetus. This is the Penguin edition of Epictetus's Discourses and Selected Writings. I have read this. Again, I read it when I was first getting into reading, and I thought, I guess I was kind of attracted to Stoicism, maybe in a dude bro-y kind of way, as Steve likes to say. But yeah, I haven't touched these since. But yeah, I'll probably return to them at some point to discover what I really think of them, because I don't really remember much about them actually. And then again, this is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. Again, I read this, but I don't remember much. I just remember it being a bunch of like diary entries. And then this is Aristotle's the Nicomachean Ethics. And yeah, I don't think I finished this, but I got through about a third of it, and that was it. I started like highlighting it, but then once you get halfway, it's just there's nothing there because I didn't get through it. But yeah, Aristotle, that's for the future. Okay, next we have a book of poetry. This is Camber, Selected Poems by Don Mackay. Don Mackay, or is it Mackay? I think it's pronounced Mackay. He's a Canadian poet. From I think he lives in Toronto, in Ontario. I mean, I'm not sure exactly where. But we had to read this for my introductory English class last year. And I thought Mackay was not bad. I didn't particularly love his poetry. But yeah, I don't really have much more to say. I wasn't too crazy about his poetry. Next up though is Viktor E. Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Again, I got this a number of years ago, and I read the first section where he recounts his experience during the Holocaust. But then I think the latter section of the book is spent recounting his theory. I'm not sure what theory it was, some kind of theory of psychology. Something about man's search for meaning, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know much more than that. Again, for the future, I got this a while ago, but I still haven't gotten to it. So yeah, there you go. Next up is John Milton's Paradise Lost. This is an Oxford paperback copy. And this is the one that this copy is the one that I first used to read the poem. And I quite like this Oxford World Classics edition. You have a lot of very helpful notes. They aren't very scholarly, but they help you understand what Milton is actually saying, because he uses a lot of words that aren't in the ordinary vocabulary. I think even for his day, maybe some of them weren't in the ordinary vocabulary. He can be a very dense poet, I think. So yeah, here's a copy of Paradise Lost. Next up, a book of Icelandic sagas, which I haven't at all read. I know that the Penguin has a deluxe classics edition of like a very big edition of the complete Icelandic sagas. I think this is just a selection of Icelandic sagas. There's one here that's titled Eric the Red. But I really don't know anything about it otherwise. Maybe I'll read the back to you. The remote and inhospitable landscape of Iceland made it a perfect breeding ground for heroes. The first Norsemen to colonize it in 1860 found that the fight for survival demanded high courage and tough self-reliance. It also nurtured a stern sense of duty and an uncompromising view of destiny. These heroic ideals found expression in the Icelandic sagas, first written down in the 13th and early 14th centuries, which relate the lives and feuds of individuals and their families between 1930 and 1030. They are the very heartstrand of the native literature of medieval Iceland, but they are also part of the heroic literature of the German peoples and rank alongside Beowulf, Maldon, and the story of the Nibelungs. Cool. Well, great. If it's anything like Beowulf, I'm sure I'll like it. But yeah, I've had that for. I think I picked this up last year, and I haven't gotten to it since. Next up here is I know a favorite of John David's. This is the Confessions by St. Augustine. And this is the Oxford World Classics edition, translation by Henry Chadwick. And I haven't read St. Augustine, but I've heard. I think I know that. I think Steve likes St. Augustine, and I've heard John David. I think John David's reading it right now, actually, and I've heard John talk about it very praisingly. I think So yeah, I'm really looking forward to hopefully soon reading this. Okay. Oh, and next is the Concise Peeps. I've heard that this is a really wonderful diary to read. It's his series of just diary entries, which are supposed to be. I don't know much more about it than that, but yeah, just diary entries that are supposed to be very entertaining. And I've had Steve's recommendation from watching his videos, so yeah, another book to get to. And here's another classic, Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. This is a new translation by Edith Grossman, with an introduction by Harold Bloom. And I've heard that this translation is one of the best. I've heard this one praised a lot. And I haven't read Don Quixote. It's a very big thing. I know that it was written in two parts, and I think I've heard Steve say that the second part was maybe not as good as the first. But we'll see. I'm gonna look forward to reading this. I've heard this praised so much by so many people, so I definitely need to get to this. Okay, only a couple more. Oh, and here's more Shakespeare. The Sonnets. This is I think this edition is about to fall apart, but this is just a Signet Classics edition of the Sonnets, with very brief notes on the bottom, and other than that, it's just very bare bones. And it has this crack in the spine, so I feel like this might fall apart soon. But yeah, more sonnets from Shakespeare. And this is the very last book on the shelf here, and this is actually a very special one, because this is I don't know if this is really I don't know if this was I don't think that this was published or sold in any widespread sense. It's a memoir from one of my ancestors. Despite Broken Promises, Childhood in Saskatchewan Homesteads and American Border Towns. The Memoirs of Sarah Pride Smith, who is, I believe, my great-grandmother on my dad's side. And I've read, actually I haven't read this. I've read probably half of it, and there are a lot of interesting stories in here. It's just about life on the prairies, I believe. So yeah, I need to get to this, actually, because it's my own family. But yeah, that is the entire bookshelf tour. Sorry, I feel like that was a little bit hectic. But yeah, that's the top rung of my shelf here. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more to go. So a lot more books to show you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you. Bye-bye.